The smell of ozone and old copper is a perfume I've worn for 45 years. It's the scent of my life's work, a tangible history etched into the calluses on my hands and the faint buzzing hum that has become the soundtrack to my thoughts. At 68, I don't move with the spring chicken speed of the apprentices, but my mind is a living, breathing blueprint of the National Electrical Code, a map of every conduit, every potential fault line, every whispered secret of electrons flowing through metal. I don't just see wires, I see the lifeblood of the modern world, and I know how to keep it pumping safely. That's why I'm still here, in the grimy but familiar bay of advanced integrated electrical. Retirement? My wife, Grace, mentions it sometimes over our morning coffee, her voice gentle with concern. But the truth is, this shop, this work, is a part of me I'm not ready to amputate. It's not about the money anymore. It's about the purpose. The quiet satisfaction of troubleshooting a complex fault that has younger men scratching their helmets. The respect in the eyes of the crew when I point out a hidden danger they'd missed. That respect was hard-earned, and until 3 months ago, it was a given. Then came the new manager. I heard him before I saw him, the brisk, unnecessarily loud click of dress shoes on concrete, a sound that screamed office and not work site. He strutted into the bay like he was owning the place, a young man in a pristine shirt that had never seen a speck of dust. He couldn't have been more than 33, with a haircut so sharp it looked like it could cut you, and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Morning, gentlemen," he'd said, his voice dripping with a condescending warmth. His gaze swept over the crew, lingering on me with a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. Pity? Annoyance? "I'm the new operations manager. You can call me Tyler." The younger guys, always eager to impress the new boss, nodded respectfully. I just gave a slow, measured nod from my stool, where I was meticulously sorting a box of ceramic fuses. He walked over, his shadow falling across my workbench. "And you must be our veteran," he said, that smile still plastered on. "Heard a lot about you. Quite the, institution around here." "I get the job done," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. My instincts, honed over decades of dealing with every type of foreman and client, were already ringing alarm bells. "I'm sure you do," he said, picking up a resistor between his thumb and forefinger as if it were a dirty insect. "But institutions can sometimes resist progress. My job is to streamline, to modernize, to bring this company into the 21st century." And that was the beginning of the end of peace. The subtle digs started almost immediately. In team meetings, he'd talk about agile methodologies and disruptive innovation, then look pointedly at me. Of course, some of our more experienced team members might find this new pace challenging. He never used my name. It was always Grandpa in a jocular tone that was anything but funny, or old-timer, delivered with a slap on the back that felt more like a push. "You gotta admire his hustle," said a young apprentice named Kyle one day, after Tyler had publicly questioned my method of calculating load capacity for a new install. "Hustle without knowledge is just noise, son," I'd told him, wiping my hands on a rag. "And noise can get people killed in our line of work." Kyle had just shrugged, his youth making him blind to the slow, insidious poison Tyler was dripping into the shop's culture. The respect I'd earned was being systematically eroded, replaced by a patronizing tolerance. Tyler's arrogance was a force of nature, built on the flimsy foundation of an MBA and a complete lack of practical, hands-on experience. He saw circuits on paper. I saw the fire waiting to happen behind the walls. The final straw came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. He called me into his office, a glass-walled box that he'd already filled with sleek, meaningless artwork. The air smelled of new carpet and ambition. "Close the door," he said, not looking up from his laptop. I did, taking a seat in the minimalist chair opposite his desk. I could feel the eyes of the crew outside watching through the glass. He finally looked up, leaning back and steepling his fingers. "Look, I'm gonna be blunt. You've had a good run, a long one. But let's be honest, the industry is changing. We need people who can keep up, who embrace new technology, not cling to methods from the last century." I remained silent, my hands resting on my knees. I knew what was coming. "It's time to step aside for the new generation," he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that was meant to sound reasonable, but only sounded threatening. "You can either retire quietly with a nice little party and a gold watch, or I'll have to, well, let's just say I can make your last months here miserable. Paperwork reviews, performance improvement plans, it'll be a tedious end to a celebrated career. Your choice." The anger that rose in me was cold, not hot. It was a deep, solid thing, forged in the fires of thousands of jobs, of lives saved by my caution, of expertise earned through decades of mistakes and learning. He wasn't just threatening my job, he was disrespecting my entire life's work. I smiled, a small, tight smile that didn't reflect the ice in my veins. I nodded. "I understand. I'll think about it." He seemed surprised by my calmness, perhaps expecting an argument or pleading. He recovered quickly, smiling back. "Good man. Wise decision." As I walked out of his office, the glass door swinging shut behind me, I could feel his smug gaze on my back. But my mind was already elsewhere. It was tracing circuits, not of copper and wire, but of power and consequence. He thought he was pushing me out because I was old. He had no idea that age had given me something far more valuable than speed: patience, and the knowledge of exactly where to apply pressure to make the whole arrogant structure come crashing down. The planning began that night, not with frantic scheming, but with the quiet, methodical precision of a master electrician about to rewire a faulty system. Tyler had just made his first and biggest mistake. He had assumed the current was off, but I knew better. The line was still live. The drive home that evening was silent, save for the rhythmic swish of the windshield wipers battling the persistent rain. The world outside my truck window was a blur of gray and green, but my mind was sharply focused, crystalline in its clarity. Tyler's words played on a loop in my head, not with the sting of insult, but with the cold precision of a diagnostic tool. He had shown me his hand, and it was all bluff. No real knowledge, just the arrogance of position. He thought power came from a title on a door. I knew it came from understanding the fundamental rules that governed the system, whether it was electrical current or corporate dynamics.
Grace knew something was wrong the moment I walked through the door. After 50 years of marriage, she could read the weather in my soul better than any barometer. She met me in the hallway, her kind eyes searching mine. Rough day? She asked, taking my lunch pail from my hand. I hanged my wet jacket on the hook by the door. The familiar comfort of our home, the warm glow of the lamp she'd made from an old vintage bottle, the faint scent of her lavender sachets, was a stark contrast to the sterile hostility of the office. I told her everything, sitting at our kitchen table while she poured me a cup of coffee, strong and black, just how I like it. Her face tightened with anger as I relayed Tyler's ultimatum. "He can't do that," she said, her voice firm. "After all you've done for that company, the years you've put in?" "He thinks he can," I replied, stirring my coffee slowly. "And legally, he probably can make my life difficult. But he made one critical error." "What's that?" "He threatened me based on what he sees as a weakness, my age. He doesn't understand that it's my greatest strength. He's impatient. I'm not. He reacts. I plan. I didn't have a detailed scheme yet, just a direction, a certainty. Tyler's type was predictable. He was desperate to prove his worth, to show that his modern ideas could outperform old-fashioned experience. That desperation would lead to corners cut, protocols ignored, risks taken. All I had to do was wait, watch, and be ready with a conduit to channel his own mistakes back at him. A human ground wire, ready to carry the fault current safely away from the innocent and directly to the source.
The next morning, I went to work as if nothing had happened. I greeted the crew with my usual quiet nod. I went about my tasks with meticulous care. I saw Tyler watching me from his fishbowl office, probably expecting me to be cowed or defeated. Instead, I was a model employee, calm and steady. Let him think his little speech had worked. Let him grow complacent. The opportunity presented itself sooner than I expected. A week later, a wave of palpable excitement mixed with anxiety swept through the shop. Tyler called an all-hands meeting, his face lit with a triumphant glow. "Team," he announced, clapping his hands together, "we've just landed the Jacobs manufacturing account, a full rewire of their original plant on the industrial side. It's a huge contract, a major show of confidence from corporate." A low murmur went through the crew. The Jacobs plant was legendary, a sprawling pre-war complex filled with outdated machinery and, rumor had it, an electrical system that was a tangled nightmare. It was a job that required nuance, historical knowledge, and extreme caution. "This is exactly the kind of high-profile project we need to showcase our new efficient approach," Tyler continued, puffing out his chest. "We're going to show them how advanced integrated electrical gets things done in the modern era." My heart beat a little faster. This was it, the perfect storm. A complex, dangerous job led by a man with more theoretical knowledge than practical sense. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, I was already preparing my tools. Not just my wire strippers and voltage tester, but my notebook. A simple, rugged, pocket-sized notebook I'd carried for years, its pages filled with sketches, calculations, and observations. It was about to become a ledger of accountability. The first day on site at the Jacobs plant was like stepping back in time. The air was thick with the smell of old oil, metal dust, and the faint, sweet odor of decay. The building was a cathedral of industry, with high, vaulted ceilings supported by steel girders coated in decades of grime. The lighting was poor, casting long, dancing shadows. And the silence. It was a heavy, waiting silence, broken only by the drip of water and the distant hum of the few sections that still had partial power. Tyler gathered us in what had once been the main foreman's office, now stripped bare. He unrolled a set of glossy new schematics on a dusty table. "Okay, people, time is money. The client wants this done fast. We're going to split into 2 teams. Team A will start pulling the old feeder lines from the east wing. Team B will begin prepping the new conduit runs in the main assembly area." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the damp air. The east wing. I'd already done a preliminary walkthrough. The east wing was still listed on the city grid as having active service for emergency lighting. I cleared my throat. "Tyler," I said, keeping my voice level. "The east wing feeders are still live. The city hasn't shut down that grid yet. We need to confirm the isolation before anyone touches those lines." He didn't even look up from his diagrams. "The work order says the power's cut. We're behind schedule already. We work from the paperwork." "The paperwork is wrong," I said, a little more firmly. "I've seen this in old plants. Backup systems are on separate feeds. It's a safety issue."
Finally, he looked at me, his eyes flashing with irritation. "I appreciate your caution," he said, the word dripping with sarcasm, "but we're not going to waste half a day waiting for confirmation. The diagram shows dead lines. We proceed." He rolled up the schematics with a sharp snap. "Team A, with me. Let's move." I stood there for a moment, the weight of his recklessness settling on my shoulders. This was worse than I thought. He wasn't just arrogant, he was dangerously incompetent. I watched him lead a group of 4 men, including young Kyle, toward the east wing. Kyle glanced back at me, his face a mask of uncertainty. He was a good kid, keen, with solid instincts. He knew I was right. I didn't follow them immediately. Instead, I took out my notebook. I found a clean page and wrote the date at the top. Then I began, in my careful, blocky handwriting. 07:45 a.m. Project start. Manager informed of potential live feed in East Wing. Recommendation to verify power status ignored. Crew directed to proceed. Then I went to work. But my work had 2 purposes now. First, to ensure my own tasks were done perfectly. Second, to watch, to listen. An hour later, I was running a new ground wire in the main area when I heard a raised voice from the east wing, followed by a sharp curse and a loud bang. My blood ran cold. I dropped my tools and ran. I found them clustered around a large, rusty junction box. One of the panels was hanging open. Kyle was standing back, his face pale, holding a pair of cable cutters. The ends of the thick black cable he'd just severed were spitting angry blue sparks. "I told you," Kyle was saying, his voice shaking. "I told you I felt a buzz on the sheath."
Tyler was staring at the arcing cables, his confidence visibly shaken. "It's just residual static," he blustered, but the fear in his eyes was real. "The cutters are insulated. It's fine." "It's not fine," I said, stepping forward. My voice cut through the tension like a knife. "That's 480 volts, Tyler. If Kyle had been grounding himself against that steel beam, he'd be dead now." I pointed to the cutters. "Those are rated for 240. They could have failed catastrophically." The crew was silent, looking from me to Tyler. The reality of their near miss was dawning on them. Tyler recovered quickly, his embarrassment turning to anger directed at me. "What are you doing here? I assigned you to the main area. This isn't your team." "Safety is everyone's team," I replied, my gaze steady. I turned to Kyle. "You okay, son?" He nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah,
Yeah, I'm okay. Go get the full isolation kit and the long-range voltage detector. We're verifying every circuit in this wing before another wire is pulled. Kyle didn't look at Tyler for confirmation. He just nodded and hurried off. Tyler's jaw was tight. I'm the project lead. I give the orders. And I'm the senior electrician on site, my voice said, so only he could hear. My order is that no one dies on my watch. You can explain that to corporate if you have a problem with it. He stared at me, a mixture of fury and something else, a dawning recognition that he might have underestimated me. He turned on his heel and stalked away, but the damage was done. His authority had been punctured in front of the crew. Back at my station, I opened my notebook again. 09:15 a.m. East Wing. Apprentice Kyle directed to cut into cables confirmed live at approximately 480 volts. Manager dismissed safety concerns prior to incident. Near miss event. No injuries. I didn't just write the facts. I noted the time, the location, the individuals involved. I was building a case, piece by piece. But I needed more than my own word. I needed a witness who couldn't be dismissed as a disgruntled old man. Later that day, I found Kyle during lunch break, sitting alone on a crate, staring at his sandwich. You did the right thing back there, I said, sitting beside him. He shook his head. I should have refused. I knew it was hot. I felt it. It's hard to refuse a direct order from the boss, especially when you're young and trying to make a good impression. But listen to me. Your instincts are good. Trust them. That feeling in your gut, that buzz in your hands, that's knowledge that isn't in any textbook. That's the experience that keeps you alive. He looked at me, his eyes grateful. He wouldn't listen. I know, and he's not going to start, which is why I need your help. My help? I'm documenting everything, I said quietly, tapping my notebook. Every shortcut, every ignored protocol. But my word alone might not be enough. I need someone to corroborate the facts. Someone the higher-ups will see as objective. Will you help me? When you see something unsafe, when you hear him give a reckless order, I want you to come to me. We'll note it down together. This isn't about getting him in trouble. It's about protecting the crew, protecting yourself. Kyle was silent for a long moment, weighing the loyalty he felt he owed to his manager against the very real fear he'd felt that morning. Finally, he nodded. Okay, I will. That partnership became the cornerstone of my plan. Over the next few days, the notebook filled up. Tyler, desperate to make up for the early delay, pushed the crew harder. He mandated working through mandatory coffee breaks to keep momentum. He approved the use of lower-grade cable in a concealed ceiling space because it was cheaper and just as good. He told a worker to bypass a faulty ground fault circuit interrupter on a temporary power line because it was slowing down the install. Each time, I noted it down. Sometimes I'd casually ask Kyle to double-check a voltage reading with me, or confirm the specification on a piece of hardware Tyler had approved. What's the rating on that conduit, Kyle? Is it up to code for this application? I'd ask loudly enough for others to hear. It was a way of creating a public record, of making the crew subtly aware that there was a second, more reliable source of authority on site. The tension was a live wire humming between Tyler and me. He knew what I was doing, but he couldn't stop me without looking guilty. He tried to isolate me, assigning me to solitary tasks in remote parts of the plant. But that only gave me more freedom to observe and document. The plant was my witness. every dusty corner and forgotten wire telling a story of neglect and haste. By the end of the week, my notebook was indeed thick with entries. It was more than a list of mistakes. It was a damning chronology of negligent leadership. I felt no joy in it, only a grim necessity. This was the only circuit breaker that could stop Tyler before he got someone killed. The call came on Friday afternoon. Corporate inspection was scheduled for Monday morning. Tyler was frantic, running around trying to put a glossy finish on a job that was, at its core, dangerously flawed. He avoided my eyes. I drove home that night, the notebook a heavy weight in my breast pocket. It felt like I was carrying the soul of the plant itself, all its potential energy and latent danger distilled into handwritten words. I showed the notebook to Grace. She read through a few pages, her hand going to her mouth. "My God, he could have killed someone," she whispered. "I nearly did," I said, "on day one." "What are you going to do?" she asked. "What I should have done a long time ago. I'm going to make sure the current is shut off for good." The weekend passed in a strange, suspended animation. Saturday morning, I sat at my kitchen table with Grace, the notebook open between us like a sacred text. The rain had stopped, and sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It felt incongruous with the weight of what I held in my hands. "Are you sure about this?" Grace asked, her voice soft but steady. She placed her hand over mine. "There could be repercussions, even if you're right." I looked at our hands, her skin soft against my work-roughened knuckles. "I've never been more sure of anything in my professional life," I said. "This isn't about me anymore. It's about the next kid like Kyle who might not be so lucky. Tyler sees a spreadsheet. I see a funeral. There's no room for arrogance when lives are on the line." I spent the weekend reviewing the notebook, organizing the entries into a clear timeline. Each notation was a brick in a wall of evidence, dated, timed, with specific actions and direct quotes where possible. I didn't need to exaggerate or embellish. The truth was damning enough. 09:15 a.m., East Wing, near miss with live 480V cables. Manager dismissed pre-incident warning. 11:30 a.m., bypassed GFCI on temporary power feed to Assembly Line B, citing time constraints. 2 p.m., approved use of non-code compliant NMB cable in concealed ceiling space above office areas, stating cost savings were a priority over spec. By Sunday evening, I had transformed the scrawled notes into a concise, professional summary. It was a story of negligence, told not with anger, but with the cold, hard facts of our trade. I felt a calm resolve settle over me. This was no longer personal revenge, it was a necessary safety audit. I was just the conduit. Monday morning arrived, gray and heavy with impending rain. The air at the Jacobs plant was electric with a different kind of tension. Tyler was a whirlwind of forced cheerfulness, barking orders that were more about perception than progress. "Make sure those toolboxes are lined up straight. Sweep that floor again. I want this place looking like a showroom." He was dressed in a new, even stiffer-looking shirt, his hair gelled defiant against the humidity. The crew moved with a nervous energy, avoiding my eyes. They knew something was brewing. Kyle gave me a slight, almost imperceptible nod as he passed me, carrying a coil of wire. His face was set in a grim line. He was in this with me now. Just after 9 a.m., 2 sedans pulled into the weed-choked parking lot. Out stepped 3 people,
A woman in a severe black suit, a man with a tablet who looked like her assistant, and an older gentleman I recognized immediately. John Miller, the regional director. My breath hitched. I hadn't expected someone that high up. Miller had a reputation for being fair but brutally efficient. He didn't suffer fools. This was both a risk and an opportunity. Tyler practically sprinted to greet them, his hand extended, his smile wide enough to crack his face. "Mr. Miller, sir, welcome to the Jacobs site. We're thrilled to show you the progress we've made." Miller shook his hand briefly, his eyes already scanning the building, taking in the scale and the age of the place. His gaze was assessing, missing nothing. "Tyler, let's see what you've accomplished." The tour began. Tyler led them on a carefully curated path, avoiding the east wing entirely and focusing on the areas where the new work looked clean and professional. He spouted jargon about optimized workflows and value-engineered solutions. I followed at a discreet distance, my notebook a quiet weight in my pocket. I watched Miller's face. He nodded occasionally, but his eyes were sharp, occasionally flicking to a junction box or a conduit run with a practiced eye. He'd been in the field once, I could tell. Then we entered the main assembly area. Tyler was proudly pointing out the new conduit runs along the ceiling. "As you can see, we've used a state-of-the-art PVC schedule that reduces installation time by 30%. Miller stopped, squinting up at the ceiling. "That's NMB cable up there, isn't it?" he asked, his voice casual but edged with steel. Tyler froze for a fraction of a second. Yes, sir. A cost-effective alternative that meets the functional requirements for this low-load application. That's not up to code for a commercial concealed space. It's a residential-grade cable. It lacks the proper fire rating." The air went out of Tyler's sales pitch. The specs allowed for some interpretation. This was my moment. The circuit was live. It was time to close the switch. "With all due respect, sir," I said, stepping forward. My voice was calm, cutting through the sudden silence. Tyler shot me a look of pure venom. "This isn't the time or place for your opinions," he hissed. "On the contrary," John Miller said, turning his full attention to me. His expression was unreadable. "I know you. You've been with AIE since the beginning. If you have something to say, I'm listening." I felt every eye on me. Tyler's face was pale with rage and fear. The corporate woman looked intrigued. The assistant poised his tablet to take notes. This was it. "Sir, my primary concern, always, is safety and code compliance," I began, keeping my hand steady at my sides. "Over the past week, I've documented numerous instances where project directives have directly contravened both. I believe it presents an unacceptable risk to the crew, the client, and the company." I pulled the notebook from my pocket. Tyler made a move as if to stop me, but a sharp glance from Miller froze him in place. "What is that?" Miller asked. "A daily log, sir. A record of decisions and actions taken on this site." I opened it to the first page. It begins on day 1 at 7:45 a.m. when I informed the project lead that the feeder lines in the East Wing were likely still live. The recommendation to verify power status was ignored. I read the entry aloud, my voice steady and clear. I then turned the page. At 9:15 a.m., an apprentice was directed to cut into those same cables. They were live at 480 volts. It was a near-miss event that could have been fatal. I continued,
methodically working through the notebook. Each entry was a hammer blow. The bypassed GFCI, the mandated work without breaks, the approved substandard materials. I didn't editorialize, I simply presented the facts, the times, the locations. I was an electrician reading a schematic of failure. When I mentioned the NMB cable, I saw Miller's jaw tighten. When I described the bypassed safety device, the corporate woman shook her head in disbelief. Tyler found his voice, spluttering. This is a gross mischaracterization. He's a disgruntled employee I was in the process of counseling out. He's twisting things because he's resistant to change. He's trying to sabotage my project.
Miller held up a hand, silencing him. His eyes never left me. Is there anyone who can corroborate these observations? I looked over at Kyle, who was standing with the rest of the crew, watching with wide eyes. He looked terrified. This was the moment of truth. I gave him a small, reassuring nod. Kyle took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I can, sir," he said, his voice trembling with clear. "I was the one who cut the cable. I felt the buzz on the sheath. I told Mr. Tyler it felt live. He told me to proceed. The notebook. What he read is true." The dam broke. Another apprentice, emboldened by Kyle, spoke up. "And he told us to skip the ground wire checks on the new runs in the South Corridor, said it was slowing us down." A third voice added, "We worked through 2 mandatory breaks last Thursday. He said the schedule was more important." It wasn't a mutiny. It was a chorus of truth. Tyler stood isolated, his arrogance crumbling into dust under the weight of collective testimony. His face was a mask of shock and humiliation. He had been so focused on proving his superiority that he had failed to earn the loyalty of his team. John Miller looked from Tyler's ashen face to my calm one, to the earnest, worried faces of the crew. He didn't need to say anything. The verdict was clear in his eyes. "Tyler," Miller said, his voice low and cold, "go wait in your car. We'll discuss your future with the company shortly." Tyler opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. He seemed to shrink, his slick facade utterly dissolved. He turned and walked away, his shoulders slumped, the click of his expensive shoes now sounding hollow and defeated on the concrete floor.
Miller turned to me. "Thank you," he said, and the words were laden with genuine gravity. "You may have just saved this company from a catastrophic lawsuit, or worse." He gestured to the notebook I still held. "May I see that?" I handed it over. He flipped through the pages, his expression grim. "This is meticulous work, the kind of diligence we pride ourselves on." He handed the notebook to the woman in the suit. "Lisa, I want a full audit of this project. Everything stops until we know it's safe and to code." He then placed a hand on my shoulder. "I need you to stay on this site. You're in charge now. I want you to supervise the remediation. Every inch of this plant needs to be brought up to standard. And when this is over, I want you back at the main shop. We need your experience training the next generation. Clearly, it's a resource we've been taking for granted." He didn't mention a raise, but the promise was in his eyes. The respect was back, amplified tenfold. The corporate team left soon after, taking my notebook as evidence. The crew lingered, the adrenaline of the confrontation slowly ebbing away. Kyle walked up to me, a relieved smile on his face. "You were right. Experience isn't so useless after all." The other guys nodded, a few clapping me on the back. The mood was somber, but vindicated. We had work to do, but now it would be done right.
The call came that evening, just as Grace and I were sitting down to dinner. It was John Miller himself. "Tyler's employment has been terminated, effective immediately," he said without preamble. "The preliminary review of your notes has confirmed everything. We're incredibly fortunate you were there." "I was just doing my job, sir," I replied, and I meant it. "Well, your job description just expanded," he said, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm authorizing a 15% raise, effective immediately. And I meant what I said about training. I want you to develop a program. Pass on what you know before you even think about retiring." When I hung up, Grace was looking at me, her eyes shining. "Well," I said, the reality of it finally sinking in. "He's gone, and they want me to stay. They gave me a raise." She came around the table and hugged me tightly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "You stood your ground." The next Monday, walking back into the main shop felt different. The air was clearer, the light seemed brighter. The younger guys greeted me with genuine smiles and nods of respect. The silence that had once felt judgmental now felt comfortable. I was no longer the dinosaur. I was the master electrician. I went to my workbench. There, sitting where I always left it, was my old tool belt. Next to it, someone had placed a new, pristine notebook. I picked it up. Inside, on the first page, someone had written, "For the next generation." I smiled. Tyler thought he could push me out because of my age. He saw the gray hair and the slower pace and mistook it for weakness. But he learned too late that time doesn't just weaken, it also strengthens. It tempers patience, hones wisdom, and forges an understanding of how things truly work. Arrogance is a bright, loud spark that burns out quickly. Wisdom is a steady current that powers everything worth building. He tried to force me into retirement. Instead, I showed him why experience beats arrogance every time. What's the most satisfying moment of justice you've ever witnessed, whether in life or in a story? Share your own tale of karma served cold.